All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first Career and Professional Development Workshop of this fall 2021 21st Century Job Search. My name is Dakota Wagner, and I have the pleasure of working for the CSU Alumni Association. And in my role, I get to bring events, both virtual and in person, to all of our wonderful alums, both local and nationwide. We would love to get to know who's watching a little bit better. So if you could please put in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're an alum, what year you graduated. We would love to learn more about you. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're so glad that you're here. We would like to take just a moment to thank all of our CSU Alumni Association members who are viewing today. Membership makes events like this, as well as a lot of our other events and programs, possible. To learn more about membership and all the Alumni Association has to offer, we'd love to invite you to download our mobile app. If we could advance to the next slide, you'll see a QR code that you can scan in order to get access to that app. The CSU Alumni Association has many virtual, in-person, and hybrid events coming up, as well as many past virtual event recordings available to all of you. I will include some links here shortly in the comment section to see our events calendar and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions during the workshop this evening, please go ahead and submit those in the comment section, and we will save time at the end to answer them for you. The recording of this webinar, the slide deck, and the other links and resources from today will be sent out to you in the next week or so, so keep an eye out for those. All of this will also be available on our YouTube channel immediately following this evening's webinar. Later on in the event, I will be including a survey link in the chat. If you could please take a moment to fill it out, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. And now I will hand things over to our presenter for this evening, Angela Hayes.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Angela Hayes. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni and Online Career Engagement. And today we'll be talking about the best ways to job search in our current environment. I'll also be addressing how COVID has added some challenges to the job search and how to strategically meet those challenges. So let's just get started. Let's jump in. Although hiring initially slowed down during the first several months of the pandemic, hiring has definitely picked back up in many sectors over the last, I'd say 3 months, 4 months. A lot of this is because there's been a lot of turnover in companies. Lockdown and working remotely gave people time to think about what they really wanted in their jobs and in their lives and in their, like the balance between their lives and their jobs, the work-life balance. And many decided that they'd been doing work that they really didn't want to do. They had time to think about that. I see a lot of those people, it's still virtually, but I see a lot of the people who have just decided they want to do something completely different. So there's some tactics that we need to use when you're wanting to move to a completely different sector or industry or even just a completely different type of job. So we'll talk about all those kinds of things, the transferable skills, the techniques that you would use to make those kinds of transitions. And what's happened is there's openings now in sectors that you might not have thought of before. And I'd like you to take some time to think about them, to think more broadly. And we'll talk about how to do that, because there might be something, even if you're happy in the job that you're in now, there's a lot of opportunity now that, frankly, I wouldn't have expected at this point within the pandemic, but there's a lot out there. Statistically, depending on where you are looking, it says that between 40 and 60% of people are going to be leaving their jobs in the next few months because they've thought through this, they've decided that they want to do something different. So that leaves a lot of openings for you to decide what you might want to do next. So the way that you stand out in an environment like this, if you want to do something different, or we'll also talk about if you want to stay within the same industry, same type of job, all of that. But still, we'll talk about how to be strategic intentional and flexible as you make those moves. Of course, there's a lot of uncertainty still about what's coming next, given the variants and the continued spread of COVID. But it's important to focus on what you can control right now, like reaching out to your network, creating new networking contacts, which we'll talk about, getting more involved with social media in more strategic ways, improving your skill sets, which we'll talk about to make you an even stronger candidate. And even if you decide to wait a few months before making a move, before actively pursuing a different job, the things that we'll talk about today will set the groundwork for you to make some really good, strong, strategic moves when you're ready to do that. So these are the main areas that we're going to cover. We'll start with flexibility, and then from flexibility, we'll target the search. We'll talk about increasing and improving your networking, learning new skills to make you an even more attractive candidate, and we'll close by talking about the importance of taking care of yourself. So, as Dakota mentioned, all of these will be available to you, so I won't be clicking through on every hyperlink. I would not do that to you. But I wanted to give you all these hyperlinks so that you'll be able to go deeper into whatever part of the topic you need more information about. Also, of course, you can contact me at any time. My contact information will be on one of the last slides. So one of the most important things to keep in mind in this new reality is that flexibility is key. To stay flexible, it helps to first assess your transferable skills. So that's why you've got a link there for transferable skills. And think about them more broadly in terms of how those transferable skills might apply in a variety of different places. We all have a tendency to think of our skills as they relate to jobs we've done, or the job that we're currently doing, or the jobs that we plan to target. But by thinking more broadly, you're able to greatly expand your job search if you choose to. So if initially you were laid off or furloughed from one of the hardest hit industries, for example, you might be thinking of how your skills could be leveraged in a completely different industry. So even though some of those have bounced back, you might decide that you're not ready to take a chance again because we're still not sure where this is going. So one way to think more broadly is, as an exercise, take all of the job titles off your resume and then think about what you did, just what you did, the skills you learned in that job. So without the job title, just really think about what you learned, what you did, what you accomplished. And very often when you look at it this way, you'll see a much broader picture of the kinds of work you can do. So for example, I've worked with a number of school teachers that when we do that, when we take that, their teaching position descriptions or the position itself off of their resume, then very often they can see that project management would be something that they might be very qualified for because they've done a lot of things that project managers do. So next, decide what's most important to you right now. Is it to take anything that pays well enough to create a financial cushion, a job that will provide consistency and stability for the next year or so, and then you might look somewhere else then, a job to build your skills for your next move, contract work that might lead to full-time work within a specific company, or taking the time to find the perfect professional position. Part of being flexible and keeping the most options open, we're going to switch gears here a little bit. Part of being flexible and keeping the most options open is to clean up your social media profiles. Update them with your new skills, experiences, courses, and certifications. Courses and certifications is something we're going to talk about later too. At any time during the job search, it's good to scrub your social media profiles of anything that might cause you problems. Now, let me also say, might cause you problems can be different for different people. So sometimes people will have long rants about something on their social media from a year and a half ago that they might just want to decide whether or not they want an employer to see that. And others feel very strongly about whatever their position is, and they wouldn't want to work anywhere that would have a problem with whatever they've posted on social media. So that'll be up to you, what scrubbing social media means for you. Keep in mind that most employers are going to Google you. It's something like 92% of companies are going to Google you to see what comes up. So Google yourself in incognito mode so that what you get isn't influenced by the searches you've done in the past, to see what other people are going to see. And then decide if that's the story you want to tell. And if it isn't, then take down some of the things that you don't feel as comfortable with. So not only will 92% of companies be Googling you, 3 out of 4 hiring managers will use what they see on social media to help make their hiring decisions. So just keep it in mind as you're looking through to see what story you're telling, what's out there. Whatever you decide, I promise you that if those social media profiles are squeaky clean, it will drastically increase the number of opportunities that you'll have. So then it's time to seriously consider if you want to change to a new industry. Again, even if your industry was hard hit initially, but they're hiring again, you may not feel comfortable with how stable going back might be, or you might have had time to decide that that wasn't really the direction you wanted to go with your career. So once you have a list of industries to consider, you can start attending webinars, virtual conferences, volunteer opportunities in those industries to see if they might be a good match and to start networking your way into those industries. The next step is then highlighting your unique skills and abilities in your application materials and online to show their relevance to those industries and to make a plan. In our current circumstances, I'd recommend having a plan A, B, and C. For example, you might want to find out which big companies are hiring right now, and then look for smaller companies, and we'll talk about how to do that. Look for smaller companies that do the same thing, but are not nearly as well known, or in many cases, they're not known at all. So you might have 5 companies in mind, this off the top of your head, that you're interested in, and you just need to keep in mind that everybody else knows those companies too. So those are very often in their top 5 or 10 companies that they're interested in. So you'll apply for something there along with 1,000 other people. Whereas doing research to find companies that do the same thing, so you'll build skills, often more skills because it's a smaller company, so they'll probably need you to wear more hats. That very often happens in a smaller company. They often don't even post jobs. And the fact that you have spent the time to find those companies and pursue them will impress them. So that can be part of your A, B, and C plan. So once you've cleaned up your social media, thought about how your transferable skills might apply, and looked at your options more broadly, then you can bring it down to those more specific company targets, which we touched on the last slide. Alum will often tell me that they don't really know how to find companies other than like those top 5 in their industry. So keeping in mind, if you do go with that, there'll be thousands of other people applying for the same job. And I'll mention this now, and I'll mention this again toward the end, because it's very important for people to realize this. Only 12% of people get their next job through applying online. And only 20% of open positions ever hit an open job posting anywhere. So if you do the math on that, and you think about how most people do their job search, it's a really awful experience for most people, because for the most part, if you're only applying online to positions, it's like dropping your resume into a deep, dark hole. So it can feel like you're putting out all this effort and nothing's coming back. You either don't hear it all, or you get an automated rejection. And it's just a really, it's not a fun experience. And I talk with lots of people that's the job search they've been doing, because that's all they knew to do. There are a lot of other things to do, and we'll talk about those. And they're much better than just sending out hundreds of resumes. It's not that you can't get a job, because eventually you will probably, but you're not getting the right job in most cases. Most of the time people look online and they'll see a position description and they'll think, well, yeah, that I could probably make that work. No, what I'd like to see happen is we figure out what you want and we go get it. And so that's more of what we'll be talking about today. How do you figure out what you want and then go after it, rather than trying to make yourself fit into something? And often position descriptions aren't written very well. So oftentimes the job is not that similar to what's been posted either. So, okay. So this is the point where we want to create a targeted company list. We need to find companies of interest. These are companies where you might want to work. You don't know yet, because we need to do more research to know. But getting a list of these companies can help you create a strategy to network your way into those companies, to get more information, see if it's a good fit, and then hopefully move into a position within that company or a similar company. I'm going to show you the first 4 of these so you can visualize what we're doing to come up with that company list. I've also given you step-by-step instructions here on the slides so that you'll be able to access those later. So let's first look at LinkedIn. So what we're going to do here is start with the company method. And the company method is, let's say you're interested in a design firm. So we'll put in IDEO. And then you view their page on LinkedIn. So you get information about IDEO, and then you see on the lower right, it says pages people also viewed. So you see Frog and Pentagram and Design It. And then you can also click through on those, go to those company pages, and then go to the bottom and see other companies that are doing similar things, and start making your list of the places that you want to learn more about, research, find out whether or not you want to keep them on your company list, or whether or not they don't belong on the list, but you might keep them on a sub list for later, or however you decide to do it. The alumni method is, we're going to come back here, and you're going to put your cursor in the search box, but you're not going to type anything in. You're just going to hit it. And then you see all of these things under it, people, posts, jobs, etc. You're going to put all filters. And then here you can put in whatever you want. I like to go as broad as possible to start, and then narrow it down. But like in this case, you might want let's say just Colorado in general. Maybe current company or past company, doesn't matter when you're starting at the very broad level of companies. You want an alum, so somebody that went to Colorado State. And then let's say down here in the keywords for a job title, let's say you want to be a project manager. So you'd look at project manager, click show results. And then we've got 2,600 project managers in Colorado, but we're not clicking through on anybody just yet. When you click through on people, if you do a lot of it, LinkedIn thinks that you're a recruiter and they'll cut you off and then ask you to pay the whatever it is, $29.99 in order to have the premium, and you don't need the premium. There's lots of ways around that. But for right now, all we're doing is creating our company list. We're looking for people in Colorado who are doing project management so we can see what companies they work for so that we can put those companies on the list. So you see PetDine and Biomark and all of these kinds of things. So if it doesn't have anything, like if it doesn't have a company name, they're probably not working right now. You don't need to click through to try to find the company name. Right now, we're just coming up with those companies to go on your list who are hiring project managers, or they have project managers. Later on, we'll look to see more specifically who's hiring. So another thing we can do is the Indeed method. Now, this is going to be different than you think it's going to be, because we're not going to go in and apply for jobs, although I know it's really difficult not to. But right now, we're just looking to see companies. Let's see, we got Fort Collins here. Let's just put project manager in. So we want to see who is hiring project managers in Fort Collins. So which companies are doing that? So again, you can go through here and add to your company list based on the fact that they have project managers. Thinking about return on investment. Okay, so if 12% of people get their next job through just applying online, you can think in terms of how much time you want to spend applying online, because there might be something that looks perfect. And if you apply for it, I would also suggest that you do some of the other things we're going to talk about in terms of networking your way into that company, rather than just sending in your resume and hoping that someone contacts you. Okay, the trends method is looking up trends in, so like in this case, I looked up trends in project management. And that came up on a different screen, so I don't know if you can see it. If not, the main thing with looking up trends is that you'll be able to see that. So Dakota, you can't see it?
No, I can, if you can just make it a little bit bigger.
Okay, sure. Okay, good. So when you're looking at trends, what you want to see is very often there'll be company names that come up. And so that can be more that you put on your company list. Other things that you can do with this is learn more about the trends that you can talk about in informational interviews, which we'll talk about soon, how you set those up and the kinds of things that you do in an informational interview. So, so like the emergence of hybrid project management approaches would be something that you might ask about when you're talking to a networking contact within a company about project management. The emphasis on soft skills, that's something that people are usually pretty happy to see who are project managers, because also artificial intelligence and data analytics are coming in to project management. And then people worry, well, are robots going to take my job? No, they're not. what's going to happen and is happening is that a lot of the more busy work, menial types of things can be done so that a project manager can focus more on working with people and making all that work. So, and then again, if you see companies or like here they're trying to get you to do a master's in project management. In a minute, we'll talk about other kinds of ways that that you can learn project management skills. Okay, so you can also, I'm not going to click through on this one, it's massive. Through your local library, you can access, there's thousands and thousands of companies and resources. It's a really good resource for finding basically every company that exists. So now we've got our company list, and now we want to find networking contacts within that company. So again, you can go to your LinkedIn profile. And in this case, what you would do is, just like we did before, you would click on that search bar on the upper left-hand side. Just click in it. Don't put anything in it. And then when you click, it'll put people and companies and all of that. You click the all filters, and then you put in anything you want. In this case, what you want to do, though, is look for people who are 1 to 2 levels above where you might want to get in. So if it's project management that you want to do, you look for senior project managers. And then what you do is find those people, decide which ones are working for companies that you might be interested in, or just people that you might be interested in, click through. And the way to avoid having to get a professional profile where you're paying every month for it is click through and find out what groups they belong to. Join at least one of those groups. You can do up to 50 groups in LinkedIn, and then you can send a message to them directly through the group. So in this case, it might be asking a question. So if you're going to ask for an informational interview, which we'll talk about in a bit, you can do that. Or if you want to ask 1 or 2 questions, if you're going to do that, if it's not an informational interview, if you're going to ask a question, make it something that they can answer in 2 minutes or less, and not something that you can find on the company website. So it might be something more specific to them or to their career progression or where they see the industry going or something like that. Another option that you can do is Hunter.io. And let me just show you right quick what this looks like. Oh, and as it says here, you can message 15 times per month for free through groups. Now, Hunter.io is a really interesting website. Again, it came up over here. So Dakota, let me know. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Looks good.
Okay, good. So this one is, you can find anybody's email address if you just know where they work. And let's say you want to find, let's say I want to find somebody at Colorado State University. Let's make that bigger so you can see all of it. And then it'll tell you the most common pattern, because most places it's like first initial, last name, or first name dot last name. So at Colorado State, it's first name dot last name at colostate.edu. But we can make sure by, let's say you want to contact Catherine, and I'm already logged into mine, you get, this is free, so you just set up a profile and you can log in, and then let's say you want to verify her email. Just cut and paste it in there, hit verify, and it's valid. So you could contact someone through LinkedIn, or you could find someone through LinkedIn and then decide that you want to email them directly. So let's back out of this. Okay. Now, informational interviewing. I cannot stress enough how powerful informational interviewing is. And I'll tell you why in a bit, but let's talk about what it is, and then we'll talk about why it's so powerful. So you've chosen the companies, you've chosen the people you want to network with. If you want to make an impression, so there's the, it sounds weird to say the old way, but it's been so long since I've been in a huge banquet hall with a bunch of other people where you're networking. But even back when we could do that, it wasn't very effective. Usually by the end of it, you've got a stack of business cards, and by the next morning, you don't really remember which person was which. Always good to write notes on the back of it, step aside and write notes, but that's a whole other issue. Right now, we're talking about informational interviews and how we can use that to network. So instead of just possibly stumbling across the right person in one of those big networking events, an informational interview is asking someone for an best case scenario of 30 minutes of their time. If they say they don't have 30 minutes, then you can ask for 20 minutes, and it can be over Zoom, over the phone, in person, whatever it is that works for the two of you. And what it is you will be asking them questions. And here I've got how to request informational interviews, the links that you can look at, good informational interview questions to use. But what you're going to be doing is focusing on them, asking them questions about their career progression. Now, at the very beginning, they'll say, tell me about yourself. And you've got 2 minutes or less to tell them about yourself and then why you're so excited to be talking to them because of what you're thinking about in terms of your next career move. But no more than that. That's about the attention span, which is tragic. But that's about the attention span for that kind of thing. So then you would ask them questions about them, some about the company, but again, not anything you could have found on their website or found easily somewhere else. You would be asking them about their thoughts about the culture of the organization or where the industry is going, those kinds of things. It's even better if you've done additional research on them, and let's say you found an interview that they did that maybe was in some obscure magazine or journal that maybe their supervisor doesn't even know that they did, but you do, and you ask them a question related to that. Now, the alum I work with will often say, oh, I don't want to bother anybody with an informational interview. I'm sure they're busy. No, people love it. People love to talk about themselves. They absolutely love it. They may not know it until they're sitting there virtually with you or sitting across from you, and you will often need to gently educate them about what an informational interview is, because they'll sometimes think that you're asking to be interviewed for a job, which would be great, but you're asking for information because you're trying to make a decision about your next career move in most cases. So you would let them know that, no, you'll be basically interviewing them. The reason that it's so powerful is because giving someone else your full attention for 30 minutes without looking at your phone, without glancing around to find someone more interesting to talk to, it's so rare in our current society. that it actually sets off certain brain chemicals and it lights up certain parts of their brain, all positive, that they then associate with you. So it's not just that you've gotten this great information from them, but it's also that they that you are miles beyond someone who sends a resume, a stranger, it's on a piece of paper. They remember how they felt when they were talking to you. And they'll tell somebody later, oh, John and I had this great conversation, even though you barely said anything other than to ask questions, because to them it felt like a really rich, really wonderful exchange, because it's pretty rare, which is unfortunate. So, so if you could find someone, let's say you want to transfer into a different industry, and you found someone on LinkedIn who did that exact same thing. They transferred from where you are now, like the kind of industry or the kind of job you're in now, into what they're doing. So you can talk to them about how they made that shift, how they feel about it. Any recommendations for anyone else they think you should talk to? Some good things to ask right now are things like, where are you seeing the most opportunities in this industry? Or what's one problem that your department, company, or field, if that could be solved, it would make life a lot easier. The other thing you'll want to do is send an email thank you within 24 hours, saying something like, given the information, the great information I got from you and the research I've done, I've decided this is a direction I'd like to go. Please let me know if you hear of anything. I've attached my resume, because you never take your resume with you to an informational interview, because you're not asking for a job, you're asking for information. But then once they've given you that information and you've thought through it and researched and decided that that is a direction you want to go, then they have your resume. It's not coming through the applicant tracking system. They have it in the email that you just sent them. And then you'll want to keep them a warm contact by every 3 weeks or month. Maybe send them a link to an article that you think might be relevant given what the two of you talked about. You might offer to do an e-introduction to someone else that they might want to collaborate with on a project. Just anything. It could even be just updating them on your job search, just keeping yourself top of mind, and also doing what networking is supposed to be, where it's give and take. You're offering things to them too, like the links, or offering to introduce them to others, or whatever else you decide to do. Now, if it's a virtual informational interview, look into the camera at least 60% of the time. I know it feels weird because they're down here on the screen, but it simulates eye contact. So it'll do more with the brain chemistry that we talked about. And it also just feels more respectful to them. So you'll want to be eye level with your camera and about an arm's length away, and you'll want the light to be behind the camera so that there's no odd shadows on your face. And regardless of whether it's virtual or it's in person, no cell phones anywhere, not ever, in any kind of interview, or I would say any kind of conversation you're having with somebody. There's tons of research on it. I could talk for days about it, but I won't obviously do that to any of you. But giving someone your full attention makes all the difference in terms of how they perceive you, and how much you learn from them, and how the two of you feel in terms of the connection that you made. So once you've looked through the different kinds of jobs and industries that might be of interest to you, and you've learned through informational interviewing what new skills you might need, this is the perfect time to upskill. So really think about what you've learned. Really think about, like, if you've looked at a lot of different position descriptions, and 75% of them say that you need this skill or this group of skills. And that's a pretty good indication that that would be a good thing to focus on if that's what you want to do. And on your resume, you can put currently taking courses in, or currently taking short courses in this, this, and this, and then you can put what the completion date will be. That helps in a variety of different ways. One of them is if you are applying online, the applicant tracking system will pick those things up as skills that are needed in the job, even if it's just courses that you're taking currently, because you're getting those skills. You just don't have it completed yet. Now, many of the skills also might be related to working remotely, like learning how to use collaborative platforms like Slack, Microsoft Teams, video software for meetings, presentations. You can list that you have all of those things, and or that you're currently taking courses or currently learning those things. I've provided a list here of free and low-cost training and certifications. Many of them are still providing their training free or at a reduced cost because of COVID. So it would be good to check those out. And for example, there's still free project management courses, and I've never seen the Project Management Institute offer any free courses. They think very highly, and they should. They have good programs, but I've never seen them offer them free before. Not all of them, just some of them. I'd also like to talk a bit about remote jobs. So it might be the case that you or someone that you're living with has a condition that makes it so you would really prefer to work remotely, or it could be that you've been working remotely and now everyone's going back to the office and you've decided you love working remotely and you don't really want to go back. You want to continue to work remotely. So these resources focus specifically on remote job listings. Keep in mind that some of these platforms are, they're for freelance jobs, which means that you wouldn't have, you'd have to deal with your own taxes and there wouldn't be benefits and those kinds of things. I won't read through all these since you'll be able to access these later on, but I would like to point out a couple of things. Flex Jobs has a lot of full-time, full benefits jobs, and it's the most heavily vetted of all of the remote job sites. There's a lot of scams out there. There always have been. There's way more now. I can't imagine that a scam could find its way on Flex Jobs. They've got people that's all they do is vet the jobs that are on Flex Jobs. And remote.co, that's their sister site, also very good site, very solid. And those two are 100% remote, no location requirements. You can work anywhere in the world. That's not always the case with remote job sites. For some companies, they need to conduct business in a specific location due to licensing, or it could be tax reasons, or it could be that they want you fairly close to their home office for training, or they want you close to where their clients are. So that's something you'd want to look into. Another two, just to mention, both FreeUp and Boldly will vet and interview you before you're allowed on the site. In the case of Boldly, they'll even match you with companies that fit your skill set. You typically have to have 7 years of experience in that type of job before they'll match you. And then this, we won't spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted you to have the slide so that you can think through how to prepare your resume if you want to do remote work. because beyond having the skills and experience that are in the job description, employers want evidence that you're flexible and disciplined enough to work alone. So consider adapting your resume to highlight any previous remote work experience, any achievements gathered while working from home. Did you solve a big crisis? Did you do a big presentation from home? And rewrite your resume and cover letter to emphasize, for instance, projects where you collaborated with distant teammates, maybe across different time zones. And since working from home means you have limited access or more limited access to the IT people, you also would want to talk about the collaboration software that you're familiar with, video conferencing tools, and so on. Also, you'd want to begin thinking about how to answer interview questions like, why do you want to work remotely? And what skills do you have that make you productive in a remote work environment? So again, I've given you guidance on the slide here about how to write up those experiences. And finally, now would be a really good time to create an e-portfolio. Whether you want to work remotely or on-site, it's a great way to set yourself apart from the competition. Remember that employers are going to Google you, and having an e-portfolio helps show what you want to convey to them. Usually that's going to come up first in that search. In the best of all worlds, your e-portfolio will delight, inspire, prove to potential employers that you have what it takes. And how you'll build it will depend on your profession. It could be creative work if you're looking for something in one of those industries. It could be charts, graphs, descriptions of projects you've done, pictures of you doing community outreach, whatever you want to display. You'll often use website building platforms to create your e-portfolio. I've given you a list here to choose from, as well as some online tutorials to take you through creating an e-portfolio on various platforms. You can just browse through them and see what would be the best fit for you. It's also a good idea to add a blog and commit to writing on a regular schedule, like once a week. Many people that I work with often freak when I tell them that. So let me tell you a foolproof way to come up with topics, because they say, I don't have any idea what to write about. So you do have a lot of knowledge. There's lots of things you can write about it. Just, it's easy for your mind to go blank when you think about writing a blog. So first, make just a general list of things you know about. Best case scenario, things that employers that you're interested in would like to know that you know about. Then come up with 5 additional subtopics for each of your main topics. I'm going to go a little slower in case you're taking notes on this. Then take each subtopic and do the following Google searches. The first one is, how do I and the subtopic? So how do I, whatever it is that was the main topic and the subtopic. Second one is, why, whatever your main topic is, and subtopic, and what, main topic and subtopic. Scan the results to see what questions people have about the topic. Compile the most interesting questions, maybe into a spreadsheet if you want. If you do that, you'll never run out of things to write about. Again, preference would be once per week on the same day, and 200 to 300 words is fine. Then share it across all your social media platforms. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is to go easy on yourself. We're all at some level of fight, flight, or freeze reaction, given the number of very real threats that are facing us across the nation and across the world, and that we get bombarded with in the news. There are so many reasons that you need to take good care of yourself. So when all these things are happening, that can make people feel a bit fuzzy, not as motivated, angry at themselves for not being as motivated as they think they should, not getting as much done as they think they should, angry at the situation, fearful, and all kinds of other reactions. Taking care of yourself and those you care about is the best way to reduce those feelings. Control what you can control and let go of what you can't. Legendary UCLA coach John Wooden said, "The more concerned we become over the things we can't control, the less we will do with the things we can control." So what can you control? You can set daily and weekly goals tied to what you're going to do, like the number of networking calls or informational interviews you'll do each day or week. Next, limit your time on the job boards if you're just using them to send out tons and tons of resumes. Like we talked about before, that can be a really bad experience. It doesn't give you a great return on investment. It doesn't even give you a good return on investment. And it just feels like rejection after rejection, which isn't a great way to take care of yourself. Think in terms of the return on investment. Decide how much time you'll spend on the job boards, and then do the rest of the time with other things that we've talked about: informational interviewing, networking, upskilling, all those kinds of things. And third, carve out time each day to take care of yourself by eating right, exercising, getting enough sleep. Spend time with people who make you feel good about yourself and your life. Watch comedies. Do whatever works for you to take care of yourself, because these are unprecedented times. So, again, if you'd like to contact me individually to talk about your job search or professional development, you find my contact information here. The best way to reach me is through email. I would be delighted to work with you. Now we're going to move to questions. And Dakota is going to put those in the chat box so that I can see them. Hey.
We got all back and set up if you want to take the one question in the chat. It's the only one that's come in so far.
Okay. So we cut out?
Yeah, we did, but we seem to be good to go now and everything is still live. So
okay.
I think
I don't see anything in the chat.
Well, I'll just read it to you.
Okay.
So it asks if you have any tips for starting a LinkedIn profile from scratch, someone who's never had one before, but has been in the workforce for about 10 years and is wondering if it's too late or if you have tips on starting one and, you know, building out your career in a profile that's brand new.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. It's not too late. And if you'd like to send me an email, I can send you some articles that go step by step how to set it up. And you can contact me and I can help you set it up also. But it's definitely not too late, and it's a very good idea to do it.
Awesome. That is the only question that's come in so far. If anyone else has any, I do see we have some people still here with us. So if you have questions, it's not too late to get those in. Here's one. Someone's had a lot of different feedback regarding how long a resume should be, and I'm sure that it probably depends on the industry that you're in or maybe the role that you're applying for, but do you have any general tips or any standards you know of in terms of maybe the length of a resume?
Yes, usually 2 pages, definitely not more than 2 pages. Sometimes you can get away with more if you're applying like in a higher ed or research type position. Even though they ask for a resume, a CV is longer, and so you can sometimes go into a 3rd page. If you're only a year or 2 out of college, up to about 5, you probably still want to keep it on 1 page, depending on. You certainly don't have to put everything that you've ever done on the resume, just the things that are relevant to the particular job that you're applying for. So, so 1 to 2 pages, typically. If it's a CV, there's no limit.
All right, well, we'll give it one more moment while
Okay.
we're waiting. Angela, do you have anything to add? Anything to wrap things up? We'll give it one more second for any questions that might come in.
No, just please feel free to contact me. I'd love to help you with any of these topics or anything else that has to do with your job search or your professional development.
Wonderful. And as you all saw, Angela's contact information is on the last slide of that PowerPoint, which, like I said, you will have access to. So you'll be able to reach out to her directly if you wish. Doesn't look like any other questions are coming in. So just one final thank you all so much for joining us this evening. The survey is linked in the comments if you don't mind taking a moment to fill that out. But again, thank you all for being here. Your time is appreciated. We're so glad to spend it with you. Stay safe, stay stalwart, and go Rams.
Yeah.